My sisters and brothers, a reading from the Holy Gospel according to Saint Mark.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Herod was the one who had John the Baptist arrested and bound in prison on the account of Herodias, the wife of his brother Philip, whom he married. John had said to Herod, "It is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife." Herodias harbored a grudge against him and wanted to kill him, but was unable to do so. Herod feared John, knowing him to be a righteous person and a holy man, and kept him in custody. When he heard him speaking, he was very much perplexed, yet he liked to listen to him. She had an opportunity one day when Herod, on his birthday, gave a banquet for his courtiers, his military officers, and the leading men of Galilee. Herodias' own daughter came in and performed a dance that delighted Herod and his guests. The king said to the girl, "Ask of me whatever you wish, and I will grant it to you." He even swore many things to her. "I will grant you whatever you ask of me, even to half of my kingdom." She went out and said to her mother, "What shall I ask for?" And she replied, "The head of John the Baptist." The girl hurried back to the king's presence and made her request. "I want to give me at once on a platter the head of John the Baptist." The king was deeply distressed, but because of his oath and the guest, he did not wish to break his word to her. He promptly dispatched an executioner with the orders to bring back his head. He went off and beheaded John in the prison. He brought in the head on a platter and gave it to the girl. The girl in turn gave it to her mother. When his disciples heard about it, they came and took his body and laid it in a tomb. My sisters and brothers, the good news of our salvation.
Praise to you, O Lord Jesus Christ.
Good morning, my sisters and brothers. In our faith, there are three things that we need to consider to, in a way, check whether we are a good disciples or not. These three are justice, charity, and also faith. When you look at these three things, my sisters and brothers, we recognize that it is easier for us to go for faith and charity or love than justice. Because when we desire to love someone, when we extend ourselves to help someone, it gives us a certain necessary consolation when people will come to us and say, "Thank you very much. You are a good person. You are a very generous person. You are a very kind person. I can see God in you." We receive certain consolation when we, in a way, do some charity or loving acts to other people. With regard to faith, it is also something that gives us consolation because we recognize that through our own faith, we experience peace, satisfaction, and also the possibility that the Lord will answer our prayer, and certain certitude and certainty that everything will be okay. But when we regard to justice, this is something very difficult to practice because it is much more on fighting for what is right. It is more on saying no to evil. It is more on having an advocacy against evil people or trying to condemn those who are living in sins or immorality. That one is much more difficult for us, sisters and brothers, because it will involve persecution. There's no consolation when we are fighting for justice, because we realize that it will mean pain, it will mean persecution, it will mean being outcast, it will mean becoming marginalized even by our loved ones. So it's hard to fight for justice. It is easier for us to go for the safer ground of loving other people and also having faith in God, but not justice. That's why sometimes, my sisters and brothers, we recognize that in the end, we need to ask ourselves, am I really true to my own desire to become a real, full-blooded Christians? We don't have any problem with faith. We don't have any problem with regard to loving or charity. Our main concern most of the time is fighting for what is right. In this gospel reading, my sisters and brothers, we recognize that we are being invited by John the Baptist to enter into the fullness of discipleship to the point of dying. Our Lord died on the cross for fighting for justice. John the Baptist, in our gospel reading for the day, died in the name of justice. And so we are also being invited. You may even ask yourself at this very moment, how's your life? Do you experience persecution or difficulty because you are fighting for the truth, you are fighting for justice, or you are trying to correct someone because of his or her mistake or sins or immorality? That somehow you realize that you are being marginalized even by your own loved ones? Or are you afraid? You know that you're supposed to do these things, but you are in a way delaying it because you don't want to be hurt by your loved ones, or you don't want to be persecuted by someone by doing it. My sisters and brothers, evil has no power. The power of evil is coming from our own fear. But evil in itself, it has no power. The more fear we have in our own hearts, the more the evil can generate more power coming from our own fear and uncertainty, and also from our own cowardice. That's why the gospel for today, we recognize that John is something to emulate or to follow. Because even to the point that he recognized that there is a possibility that he will be persecuted for saying something against the relationship of Herod and also Herodias, which is basically an immoral relationship. But he decided to go for it. And so because of that, John the Baptist gained the grudge or hate of Herodias. Unfortunately, here in this gospel reading also, it's good to consider that Herod was actually, my sisters and brothers, a follower, or he in a way adore or like John the Baptist. But unfortunately, in terms of where is his heart, when he recognized that John was actually a prophet that needs to be respected, but because of his own fear of being judged by people, but because of his desire also to be praised by other people, Herod sacrifices John the Baptist. Sometimes, my sisters and brothers, this is also something that we are also in pain. Sometimes we are also sacrificing justice, sacrificing truth, because we don't want people will persecute us, or because we want people to praise us. And so in the end, we sacrifice the truth or justice. In the end, this is basically the challenge being given to us. In reality, sisters and brothers, the fight of the evil spirit and the good is actually an ongoing battle. And most of the time, the battle of the evil spirit and the good spirit is happening in our own mind, especially when we are about to discern and decide what we're supposed to do. The evil spirit will always instill in our own hearts and mind pressure, persecution, or the possibility of persecution, fear, so that in the end, because of our own fear, we tend to run away from the things that we're supposed to do and flight because of our own inability to face what we're supposed to do. We continue to pray, my sisters and brothers, for courage. Come to think of it, you may even ask yourself right now, what are the things that you know that you are supposed to do, but you are not yet doing it? You are trying to delay it. What are the reasons why you are trying to delay it or you're not doing it? If you realize that this is basically about fear or losing a friend or losing your own status in life, I guess in the end, we become like Herod in this gospel reading. Let's fight for justice. It is actually very difficult. You know, here in Caloocan or Diocese of Caloocan, you may not even know that the extrajudicial killings are still ongoing. There are moments that we hear that someone is murdered, cold blood murdered. But unfortunately, when you look at our newspaper, you don't see news anymore about the extrajudicial killings. But it is actually still happening in the Diocese of Caloocan. Maybe it's because our newspapers are muted. Or maybe our newspaper did not recognize or cannot see it anymore as news. Because extrajudicial killings becomes an ordinary thing, that it becomes not a news anymore in our own society. That's why in the end, we may say, or people may say, that it seems that the evil spirit is winning. Why? Because the good news is not talking. The disciples of the truth is so silent. We are so silent. We don't talk. And so, because of our own great silence and fear, the evil becomes much more confident in our own present time right now because of our own fear. My sisters and brothers, let's look at John the Baptist. Very, very brave because he wanted to fight for the truth. In the moment or in this pandemic crisis, maybe our main enemy right now is the COVID virus itself. Are we running away from it? Yes, it is very real to say that we need to avoid or to find way of running away from the COVID virus so that we may not get infected. It is actually natural. But it is also this moment, sisters and brothers, in the midst of the pandemic, that we are actually being asked also or invited by the Lord to be more bold and to find ways, a creative way of helping other people. I am not telling you that you're supposed to be brave right now and go out and do something for the poor. That's very dangerous. It is much more on just to make you realize that the COVID virus must not stop us from doing something, a creative way of helping other people. You don't need to go out to be able to help those who are in need. There are creative ways of helping them even if you are at home. But of course, there are also some much more people who are being called to really go into the front lines to help other people, especially the doctors, nurses, the volunteers. This is a call. But not everyone is being called to go to the front lines. Some are supposed to stay in the back lines in our own home to support also those who are in the front lines. To become part of the prayer warrior is necessary. To support by donating or becoming a benefactor is also unnecessary. As disciples of Jesus, to become like John the Baptist means a lot. That's why prayer is necessary, that when you go to prayer, in your own silence, dispose yourself, set aside your fear, pray for courage, and then ask the Lord, Lord, what do you want me to do? And the Lord will speak to you. Because sometimes, my sisters and brothers, it is our own fear and our own anxiety that stops us to listen to the will of God and do it. John the Baptist decided to listen to the will of God, but I'm sure fear was in his heart. But he decided to go for it because he realized that in the end, he needs to do three things. Faith, easy part, to love other people, also easy, but to fight for justice is rather much more difficult. But he decided to go because these three things are necessary for us to say we are living in the fullness of life and a full-time disciple of Jesus.